Okay. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining this webinar from. I'm Ernestina Teria, and I'm your moderator for today's session. I welcome you all to Cyber Month and to today's webinar. So, the theme for this year's Cyber Month is Secure Our World. But how do we secure our world if we do not know the threats involved? And that's what today's webinar is all about: cybersecurity in the digital age. At Smart Infraco, we've noticed the rapid growth of technology and the transformation it's brought to business operations, the opportunities it's brought, and the capabilities as well. However, technology has also introduced a range of cybersecurity threats that poses significant risks to organizations. Joining me to dive into these critical issues are experts in the field of cybersecurity. But before we introduce our speakers, let's take 2 minutes to wait for those who are yet to join us. So share the link and invite some friends and tell them the webinar is live. Okay, so welcome back. You're once again welcome to today's webinar. The theme, once again, is cybersecurity in our digital age. I'm going to introduce our speakers shortly. They are ready and they are poised, waiting to share some nuggets and knowledge with us. I hope your notepads, your pens, your coffee, your water, your juice is ready because it promises to be very educative and insightful. So, moving on to our first speaker, she's an accomplished IT consultant in the tech platforms unit of KPMG Ghana, with over 5 years of experience in the IT advisory field. She has a robust background in cybersecurity, data privacy compliance assessments, data migration, PCI DSS standardizations, just to name a few. She also holds a master's degree in cybersecurity, specializing in business continuity and incident handling from EC Council University, and a Bachelor of Science in IT with a focus on information security from the University of Ghana, Legon. Our speaker is an ISO 27001 lead auditor certified by PECB and holds a privacy ops certificate from security and is also a member of the International Information System Security Certification Consortium, ISE squared, and the International Association of Privacy Professionals, IAAP. Please help me welcome on stage Miss Ife Bonfote. Ife, you're welcome.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Enesina. I hope you can see and hear me.
Yes, you're audible. So moving on
And
to
can you
our
see
next
me? Because I
speaker.
think I was getting.
Yes, we can see you and you're audible too. Okay. Moving on to our next speaker. He's an experienced cybersecurity professional, passionate about fintech and AI security, expertise in internal controls assessments, risk management, and information security. He's skilled in developing policies and procedures with a focus on privacy and regulatory compliance. He's also experienced in monitoring security alerts and logs using advanced SIEM tools, managing vulnerabilities, and contributing to security awareness programs. He's well versed in the risk management framework, POA and M management, and incident monitoring and reporting. Please help me welcome on stage Mr. Samuel Kojo.
Hi
Hi,
everyone,
Samuel.
glad to be here. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Now to our third speaker. He's a seasoned cybersecurity expert with over a decade of experience in cybersecurity consults, training, and information security policy development. He currently serves as the national president of the Cybersecurity Experts Association of Ghana, where he leads a network of professionals focused on strengthening Ghana's cybersecurity landscape. As the executive director of the Center of Cyber Watch and Data Protection, he oversees strategic initiatives to enhance data security and compliance across organizations. In his role as CEO of Bipoly Technologies, he drives innovation by delivering cutting-edge technology solutions that meets the needs of diverse sectors. Please help me welcome on stage our final speaker, Mr. Abubakar Isaka.
Thank you very much, Ernestina. Thanks for having me. And good afternoon to all the audience.
Good afternoon to you too. So let's dive right in without wasting my time. What is cybersecurity and what are the current major cybersecurity threats that organizations face today? Samuel, can you help us with that? What is cybersecurity?
Okay, amazing. So it makes me remember when you were once asked what is a noun. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to explain what cybersecurity is. But before that, I want to take the opportunity to welcome everyone who can hear me wherever you are. Let's talk about cybersecurity some more. Good. So organizations actually have what we call assets. Their assets could include systems, could include networks, could include data. And then when we talk about protecting these assets, protecting them such that attacks which could be aimed at allowing people to gain unauthorized access is prevented. People are prevented from stealing sensitive information. If we talk about this, then we are talking about cybersecurity. Before I go deeper into cybersecurity and what it is, many times when you hear cybersecurity, you are likely to hear information security. So I'll establish the difference shortly, then I'll go deeper into cybersecurity. So basically, let's talk about you having a house, and then in your house, having a fridge in your house. You may have some good milk that you like so much in your house. When we talk about every measure you take in protecting everything in your house, this could also include maybe locking your house, locking your windows, locking your doors, even locking your refrigerator to make sure that no one steals your milk, then that entire body framework of protection, controls that will allow you to protect your house so much, will fall under the big umbrella called information security. So we then talk about maybe the broader field concerning protecting every form of information. Information could be digital information or physical information. For example, paper documents could be protected, and also digital databases could be protected. That broader field will be information security, or what people normally call infosec, depending on what you ate in the morning. Infosec, yeah, good. And then cybersecurity, on the other hand, will be a subset of information security. This one will focus specifically on protecting digital systems and networks from what we call cyber attacks, right? We are looking at defending against unauthorized access, defending against malware, defending against data breaches, electronic platforms like computers, servers, routers, mobile devices on the internet. Here, I believe you have understood what cybersecurity is, I mean, in its entirety. Very good. So, professionally, the next SP 812 tries to define cybersecurity. I don't want to go there and bore you with some professional definition for cybersecurity, but cybersecurity in itself comes with a couple of domains. So most of the time when people think about cybersecurity, they also think about hacking. Everybody thinks about hacking, right? Very good. But then let me introduce you to the various domains that fall under cybersecurity. We could talk about network security, protecting the integrity, the confidentiality, and availability of network infrastructure. Here, companies are using IDS, IPS, intrusion detection systems, intrusion prevention systems, virtual private networks to protect network infrastructure. We can also talk about application security, where we make sure that applications are actually secure. You're protecting applications against SQL injection attacks, cross-site scripting attacks, malware installations. I mean, those form of attacks. We can also talk about all the domains in cybersecurity. We can mention the endpoint security. We can also mention identity and access management (IAM). Then we could also talk about cloud security, which is the big deal of the millennium. I mean, everyone is talking about cloud security. We talk about AWS, Azure, and then its various forms of data storage. So protecting these assets as well form under a domain in cybersecurity called cloud security. Within the same cybersecurity, we can talk about incident response, we could talk about penetration testing, and then we can jump and talk about what I love, governance, risk, and compliance. A particular domain that has to do with ensuring that on an organization's cybersecurity strategies, particularly aligned with laws and regulations, and you're going to look at things like managing risk, ensuring compliance with standards such as GDPR and others. So I think that on a very quick note, I have introduced you to the world of cybersecurity and what it is. Thank you, Ernestina.
Okay, thank you very much, Samuel. So the next would go to Abubakar. Abubakar, someone mentioned cloud security. So I would like to ask, how has the threat landscape evolved in the digital age with the rise of cloud computing?
Well, I'll greet your humble listeners, and then I'll also use this opportunity to commend Smart Infraco for coming up with this initiative, especially during the Cybersecurity Awareness Month, where we create awareness. This is a call to duty, and Smart Infraco should be commended for this act. Going forward to cloud security, looking at the threat landscape, I would say that it keeps evolving and currently becoming more sophisticated. We understand that previously we used to have servers which is on-prem, where we have servers in our premises in our various institutions where we deploy our solutions and execute them for our daily operations. Now, cloud has now come in ensuring that we move all those data. We might not necessarily need to have a physical server on premises, but then we can deploy every solution that we have in the cloud storage. Prominent among the cloud storage are the AWS. We have the Microsoft Azure, and then the Google um, cloud solutions that Samuel made mention of. The threats that is prominent these days, I would like to take reference to IBM, which currently rated recent threat that is affecting the cloud storage. Prominent among them is what we call the cross-site scripting, the XSS. Essentially, cross-site scripting becomes an avenue where attackers uses a cloud solution to put in malicious link or malicious solutions or malicious executable files in luring people that visit your solution as an end user to possibly benefit from it in one way or the other. The intention in deploying some of these things is to ensure that at the end of the day, they are able to fish out victims that will possibly click on these links, and then or victims that will possibly try to click on those executable files. It is still becoming one great threat that is seriously affecting the landscape in the cloud computing industry. And I will suggest few recommendations here after that. Going forward, there is the angle of stolen credentials. In the dark web, people buy these credentials and then come back to use it in attacking one cloud solution or the other. But going forward, I think in 2022, a single credential or a single password can cost in the dark web ranging about, let's say, $10 to $11. But now you see the trend going down that you can now access a credential at around $9 or $9.23. Currently, I'm talking about 2024. Looking at this trend, you can see that there is a trend that is happening, and currently people are deploying certain solutions in ensuring that the purchase of credentials that will be affecting cloud storage is becoming more useless by how do you call it, instituting various areas like instituting passkeys and the rest. Now, passkeys, let me use this as an example that once we are using our mobile phones, we realize that even once we are using our banking solution, banking app, instead of us entering username and password, now passkeys is now enabling us for us to enter either a PIN or use a Face ID that will give us access to the solution that we are having access to. And that is another avenue that is declining or making a little bit of uselessness on the aspect of password credentials, or how do you call it, credentials being sold in the market, talking about the dark web. Let me switch back a bit. In 2018, I think I led a team that did a finding, doing a follow up on the trend at what happened at the National Service Secretariat, where the cloud storage that the NSS was using actually got leaked in the Amazon Web Service (AWS). Essentially, what happened was that once you are using a cloud storage, you understand that if you are in AWS, in order to get storage in AWS, it is termed as a bucket. So once these buckets were being procured by NSS, they only ensured that they had usernames and passwords in protecting those infrastructure. However, once you are able to have access to the S3 bucket, you can also access certain critical information that has to do with it. So information from NSS got leaked. Critical among them were national service personnel's ID card, their allowances, their names, and critical among them were their locations and all that. This became a very serious issue, and I want to use this to highlight on this angle, speaking about threat landscape, to say that yes, of course, it is not even far away from Ghana. It happened, and then if you go to modern Ghana GH, I think in 2021, I may give reference if maybe further questions comes in here. Um, Modern Ghana GH reported this incident, stating that there were a little bit of data breach that is associated with cloud computing that the National Service Secretariat was using. But I must say that subsequent measures were being put in place, and all these measures were being kept. In South Africa recently, I think in July, you realize that their general laboratory, their national laboratory services, where national hospitals or state-owned hospitals send in samples for the national laboratories to execute the test and use a cloud solution in disseminating the test results to the various hospitals in ensuring the smooth operation of treating patients. This whole platform, which was a cloud solution, was under attack in July, and the there was a huge downtime protocol that was being executed there, um, outlining serious effects that happened in South Africa. People actually lost their lives. Others who were supposed to have treatment delayed their treatment because the platform was down. They have to now sort to using other third-party platforms like sending results through WhatsApp and the rest. This tells us that the landscape in the cloud computing is seriously at risk, and people do not move to your local cloud solution or on-prem solutions again, because obviously they know that you don't keep your information there again. You deploy it in the cloud, and then they move into the cloud solution to be able to get you. One key threat that is being affecting cloud solution is misconfiguration, and that is what I want to highlight and point out very clearly and very passionately, because as cybersecurity professionals, we usually have monthly situation meeting, and all our monthly situation meeting we have these issues popping up: misconfiguration with regards to cloud computing or our cloud solutions that we are deploying. We tend to relax in the configuration stage, and we end up by opening up vulnerabilities for threat actors. Most of the times, these threat actors does not even come from our country. Like the South African case that I cited example, the attack actually came outside South Africa, and this institution owned up to the challenge that yes, we brought your system down, and I don't know their mission, but then currently I'm told the laboratory services is up and running now. This tells us that we need to be up in our game, and I would like to put in quick recommendation because of the want of time. The recommendation with regards to the CXXX cross-site scripting that I'm talking about for developers. I'll be happy that developers are here to listen to this critical information so that in future, because here we are suggesting solutions, we are giving recommendations that will help through this medium, help institutions, businesses in Ghana to safeguard themselves from being attacked. Developers should ensure that they validate input in ensuring that exe files or links that are malicious are not even clickable. Let me use that word. So once you deploy a solution and there is an avenue for comment where end users or the general public will have to put in comment, you need to validate that angle in ensuring that at the end of the day, once I have malicious intention, put in my malicious link or a malicious executable file, it does not even validate it. It sees it as a normal text. And I think this is one great thing that developers should pay attention to. And with regards to end users, I would say that end users need to pay attention to these links and also pay attention to these executable, how do you call it, files that is being attached to comments that end users are putting across so that they might not look enticing. Sometimes it looks as if the entity or the institution finished deploying the cloud solution, and at the end of the day, some people are maliciously using your platform to now harm others. And that is why we are seeking to curb in with this regard. With the stolen password that I'm talking about, it is very essential that institutions to now start deploying what we call the pass keys. We know I already talked about the pass keys where we have a one-time pass key, you log in and you are done. This is actually working and it's ensuring security in regards to cloud solutions as well. And we also encourage all developers or all institutions that are using solutions to institute multi-factor authentication in all the applications that they are using or deploying in their cloud storage, and that is going to ensure that at the end of the day, all these menace or all these threats that I'm stating will come. And I think lastly, we need to have a periodic training that will educate end users, both end users and even the technical team or the frontliners, so that at the end of the day, we have maximum knowledge on the threat that we are being faced with. I think I'll have to end here because I don't know time that I've been given to make my submission. I have a whole lot of practical and real life example that highlight threat landscape that is evolving in our digital age with the rise of cloud computing. But please permit me to end here. If there are further questions, I'll.
Right. Thank you very much, Abubakar. So far, I believe you are getting your knowledge, your nuggets, and you're noting down your points. From Samuel Wabing, what I took from him is that cybersecurity is actually a subset of information security. So it looks like information security is the bigger umbrella, and cybersecurity is beneath that umbrella. And as a network engineer, network security would be my priority. As an app or a developer, you are supposed to make app security your priority. So anything that has digital or technology involved, you have to prioritize security. From Mr. Abubakar, end users must pay attention to links. We all know that in cybersecurity, humanity is the weakest link. So pay attention to the links that are being forwarded to you. Organizations must use passkeys, and for developers, make sure you incorporate multi-factor authentication in your apps. Also, I think periodic training, HR has also gotten this. HRs, you should make sure that we have periodic trainings on cybersecurity. Now, in Cyber Month, we always hear best practices, cybersecurity best practices. Ife, what are the key cybersecurity best practices businesses should implement to protect their digital assets?
All right, thank you very much, Ernestina, and I hope you can hear me. It's been a very interesting conversation following from Samuel to Abubakar, and I think even some things that Abubakar touched on sort of roll into some of the things that I might outline here. I have realized that, you know, as you said, sometimes the term is overused. They'll say best practices, and immediately everyone's mind goes to, frameworks, systems, solutions, and people just, get start to panic or get overly excited. But one of the first steps that I would always advise is that you need to understand your digital landscape and the risks that exist in your digital landscape. So the very first best practice I think every organization can start with will be doing a risk assessment, right? You're going to look at what are the digital assets within your landscape, and that would inform you of what risk exists and what necessarily the remediations that you need to implement are. If you do this and if you avoid doing this and you just go in blindly, listen to experts, quote unquote, consultants, listening to your IT team, you'd realize that you make a lot of investments in your businesses, but you're not really seeing the returns on those investments in terms of seeing your digital landscape more secure and all that. Now, some key components of a risk assessment is risk identification, your risk analysis, then your evaluation. And even with this risk assessment, you realize that when you go into businesses, they do not even have a acceptance criteria. So then when they're even doing their risk assessment, they're looking at their digital assets, they identify the possible vulnerabilities and things that could impact their digital assets, but then they do not even understand from the risk perspective that is this a threshold that we can accommodate, or this is something that we have to deal with and prioritize right now, that would inform you on the direction that you even need to go, or which best practice you need to implement. So I'll start first of all from there. Then another thing that I already previously mentioned was to implement a robust cybersecurity framework. Now, we understand that organizations are not just about the systems that they use, they are about the people, processes, and procedures all come together to form an organization. And if I'm looking at an organization and I'm telling them to implement a robust cybersecurity framework, I'm talking about their policies, their procedures, their processes. How are they imbibing cybersecurity into the organization, the backbone of the organization, to ensure that the organization has that strength or foundation to stand on, to make sure that on the digital landscape they are secure, right? So when you look into implementing robust cybersecurity frameworks, you talk about ISO 27001, you talk about NIST, you talk about ISO 22301, which is talking about business continuity. Now there have been privacy frameworks, ISO 27701 and the likes, COBIT, right? And all that. There are a lot. Sometimes you look at it and you are even asking yourself, which framework should I even implement? And that's why I started from the risk assessment. If you're doing your risk assessment properly, you're looking at and understanding your digital landscape, understanding which assets you even possess in the first place. That would even inform you of which standards or which frameworks to even implement. And another thing I'd like to hash on, which organizations mostly look over, because we go into our organization and then they say that they have implemented their ISO 27001 certified. As you may see, a lot of organizations of late are ISO certified, compliant with a lot of these international best practices. But what, in my experience, I've realized is that when you go and do a proper assessment in these organizations, you realize that it's either they try to comply as a stamp of validation to the public, because it's a brand boosting move, as well as it being um, um, a cyber risk solution, right? So if you're looking at that, you come into the scenario and you realize that, okay, they have policies. Now, if you go and read and assess their policies, you realize that the policies are very porous. They do not necessarily apply to the context of the organization. And I understand when you go online, you can do a quick Google search. Even now, there's generative AI, whereby you can literally ask Copilot, ChatGPT to draw up an information security policy for you. And if you're not working with the right set of consultants, they would, or you're not working with the right skill set per se, they can okay the cybersecurity policy or information security policy, access control policy, and patch management policy, backup policy, retention policies, all these things, they'll just okay it and not necessarily ask themselves that how relevant is this policy to my organization? How well is this policy capturing all the nooks and crannies of my organization? Given that you've sorted your policies out, now you're looking at procedures, and most of the time you realize that organizations focus a lot on policies but are forgetting that the reason why they constantly face the same repetitive cyber issues or cyber attacks or technology risks is because they do not have well documented procedures based on these standards. Now, what's the difference between a procedure? A procedure will tell you the step by step instructions that you have to follow to complete a particular process. And the reason why this is very important but often overlooked is because you need to have something documented such that it is bridging the knowledge gap. And also, it is something that everybody agrees to and aligns. And it also helps you to, as an organization, go back to your procedure, reflect on it, and then update it or give the necessary changes where it is required. Especially when there's been an upgrade to the framework that you are implementing, you'll be able to actually assess and do a thorough upgrade of that particular process, and then you are staying on top of your game, right? But if you just rely on documentation of a policy, and even if you have the procedure put down somewhere and it's not applicable to the context of your business, you are still at risk of all the cyber threats in the digital landscape, right? Another thing sorry, that I'll always, and I think I'll make reference to Abubakar's point when he was talking about, training end users, and then having the developers also have some sort of training on how to imbibe security into their developments, right? So even, and that's actually what comes down to when it comes to developers. You look at the SDLC, the software development lifecycle, and most of the times at every stage of the software development lifecycle, you try to imbibe security. There is a control in ISO 27001 that sort of demands your developers to practice secure coding, and then would have shown evidence of undergoing or completed secure coding training, right? And this is just to make sure that your people are not just chasing innovation at your detriment, right? They are chasing innovation, but at the same time, they are being protected by the governance and the cybersecurity controls that would allow you to push innovation, but within a safe boundary, right? So most of the time, when it comes to employee training and awareness, which is very another best practice for businesses, you'd realize that you go into organizations and they are very big on employee awareness. They have posters around. They organize these quarterly sessions or weekly or bi-weekly sessions whereby they are sharing cybersecurity best practices with their employees. Some also use some that we've seen use software such as Know Before or other learning management systems in their ERP tools, and they deploy certain trainings for their employees to complete. And then the use of or the deployment of these tools would allow them to track that the employees have actually gone through that training, and then they have this the form of assessment at the end, which will allow you to validate their knowledge at the end of the day. Moving a step further from that, what organizations tend to forget is that you're not necessarily capturing everybody when you stop at employee training and awareness, because you're forgetting about you're not considering your specialized employees. That is your give or take your CISO, your developers, your information risk manager, your CIO, CTO, whatever your organogram looks like. Your your ignorance to these rules will come back and bite you, because at the end of the day, even if you want to implement robust frameworks, these frameworks will keep updating and advancing. And these frameworks would also require the implementation of certain solutions and tools. If you look at the backbone of your organization and you realize that your key resources, that is your cyber professionals, those who are, I have this little term I give to the people who protect our digital landscape. I call them cyber avengers. So if your cyber avengers don't lack the superpowers, right, which is the right training and certification to protect your digital landscape, you're running at a loss. You can bring in the most complex SIM, IAM, IDM. You can bring in all those tools, Microsoft Purview, you name all of them. If you do not have adequately skilled and trained staff to manage these things, you come back to Abubakar's point on misconfiguration. Because what happens at deployment, the person is not skilled enough to even deploy or manage that tool. It just takes, we had a situation with a client whereby I don't know what, up to now, we don't know the details because maybe they might be a little bit embarrassed about that. But then somebody went to mess up with their AD, obviously, somebody who wasn't well skilled to manage the AD. The next thing they know, everybody's IDs are messed up. I can access this person. I'm logging in, and then my name is showing up as another, maybe Abubakar's name. Abubakar is showing up as Samuel. And the problem with that is the resolution didn't come as quickly. It took a very long time for people to be accessing different people's accounts and being called different people before the resolution came. And not because, even though the organization was doing firm-wide employee awareness, they were not paying attention to their core staff, their cyber avengers. They were not paying attention to them, whereby most of these people, like I said, for the developers, will need to go through secure coding training. Even if you're a CISO, you might want to consider putting your CISO through an ISO 20000 training, which is going to teach them some IT service management principles based on best practices from ISACA 27001, that's the information security management system, and the like. Even looking at PCI DSS, if you're in a bank, you might want to put your staff, not just try and comply with the standard, but also train your staff, right? Most of the times, organizations are compliant with the standards, but they do not train their staff, which is at the end of the day going to be a gap, and it's going to be a cancer that bites you at the end of the day. Now, the other thing I would also lastly touch on for another best practice is to stay on top of your game with software and hardware upgrades. Do not wait to the end of life of the system before you consider an upgrade. Most of the time, by the time you get there, you realize that support is not available. When you have issues for your vulnerabilities, there are no patches for it. Then you find yourself on an island, basically trying to fight for your life. That's when you now pull the flag and say, I need help. It's a little bit too late by that time, right? So, um, just trying to curb that, you need to be on top of your game with upgrades. And another caution I'll throw, because an example I'll cite is with when I think about in 2018, when Windows 10 did an upgrade, and there are some of us, even some of us in this room, that as soon as an upgrade is released and new software, we will click like you've even set your phones, especially with if you have an Apple, you've set it to automatic updates. So when you sleep and you wake up in the morning, iOS 11, iOS 14, and you are going, right? You cannot take that same risk as a business. You cannot put your updates on autopilots like that. There needs to be somebody that tests these upgrades before they are deployed. So we have something called patch testing. So if you have a QA environment or a testing environment, sandbox somewhere, you can deploy it there, see how it affects your organization, see how stable that release is before you deploy it. You don't just deploy and hope for the best. We realize in situations like I think in 2014, yes, Apple iOS did that release, and there was an update that caused issues with the cellular connectivity. So you realize that your cellular device one moment is connected, then you realize that you don't have any network anymore. That instability. So me in on my personal life, I wait a bit. I don't wait too long, but I look at the updates that has been released, and I look at I always read the patch fix it. What exactly is this thing, trying to fix or solve before I release or allow my phone to go and update. So as a business, you need to be taking these precautions. Imagine one day you just click update and you deploy a Microsoft update, and in that Windows 10 update, what companies found out was that after deploying it, files were just deleting by themselves. You don't delete them. Imagine a very critical company file just disappears overnight just because somebody just, instead of testing and assessing the risks, looking at how the behavior of this new release is, the person just went ahead to deploy it. And also not patching on time. Like I mentioned, you don't wait too long, but not patching on time. Once you test it and then it's fine and it's good to go, but you saying that you'll forget, or maybe, and actually in Ghana, let me bring it down to the Ghanaian context, because finances is a problem. It's not something that we can shy away from. Some of these upgrades require some financial commitment, and it's not necessarily always available to us. So some organizations, the reason why they have not upgraded their OS or left systems that are end of life is because of the availability of funds. That is why I always say, my point number one, do you understand your digital landscape? Do you understand the requirements of your business for you to also um, 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 deploy solutions that you can maintain at least over a projected period? Because what I've realized is some organizations would, for example, I've worked with organizations that have deployed SAP S4 HANA, and they go big tickets. They buy a lot of modules, a whole host of modules, and you're wondering how is even their infrastructure, how is their capacity even holding this? Can they consistently, hold this for that long? And are all these modules even necessary? You see a very small organization that has gone to buy the entire Oracle Fusion suite, and you're wondering, do they need all these things? And usually that's when misconfigurations come in, whereby you're not taking your time to configure each module and deploy them. Then you realize that there are gaps in there. Then people, malicious actors will take advantage of it. The next thing you know, we hear in the news that your company has gone through a breach. It's because you're not doing a proper assessment to determine the needs for your landscape. So that's where I want to tie everything in. Start with a risk assessment, assess the needs of your organization, understand your digital landscape. Then you go ahead, you can implement a robust cybersecurity framework to hold that digital landscape. Then you look at your employees and your skilled employees, your specialized employees, train them, consistently keep awareness on track, upgrade your software and your hardware, but also paying attention to testing these upgrades before releasing them or deploying them, and ensuring that you always have, if you have an on-prem infrastructure or system, make sure that you always have the capacity to host it continuously. I mean, I know we are in the age of cloud, but there are some businesses that still host on-prem, and usually it's really a huge infrastructure investment. But if you can, and for some reason, based on your risk assessment, even your risk assessment will inform you whether you should go for cloud solutions or whether you're even ready for cloud, or you can remain on-prem and host and manage your own data. So it's not necessarily because the trend is going for cloud and everybody's going, right? There are organizations, and it will surprise you, some well-known organizations host a majority of their things on-prem, and you're looking at the concept of data privacy because as data transfer agreements, looking at the data protection acts, GDPR, cross-border transfers, when you go into that space, you realize that it's quite an animal in there. So understanding all those things as you're doing your assessments help you inform what solutions you are deploying or what best practices you are shooting your leg with. Right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ife. That's a lot, a very whole lot. And
Yeah,
thank you very
sorry
much
about that.
thank you very much for the list of best practices. And most at times we are looking at the surfaces of best practices, but this is in depth, and we are really grateful for all the insights. What I personally resonates very much with is upgrading periodically and on time. I know so many of our organizations will have their names written on that, and we are all guilty. We don't upgrade our systems on time, it's always last minute. Sometimes the systems can give us constant alarms prompting us to upgrade, but we'll keep ignoring. And yes, we can also assess or ascertain to the fact that funds are also involved. But I would also put the question across, would you want to lose your business or you'd want to protect it and
Yeah.
have your business and have income coming in? So that's food for thought. So, what are some of the roles employee education what are some of the roles that employee education play in maintaining cybersecurity? We've been talking about train our employees. This still goes to Ife. What role does employee education play in maintaining cybersecurity, and what training methods work best? Because we constantly train our employees, but we are still the weak link. So, what works best?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you started very, very well with the fact that we keep trading, but we are still the weakest link. And I mean, there's a popular saying: "There's nothing like 100% security." There's always that gray area. You can never look at your landscape and say we are 100% secure, right? There's always going to be a gap. So far as you have human beings, there's always going to be a gap. But right, what I in my experience I would speak from is, and based on every type of organization that we have assisted in the past. We'll start with maybe organizations like banks, which maybe would cut across some of our largest clients. So if you're looking at a situation like a bank, whereby it's very, very, and I would put an emphasis on very, very dangerous for a mistake to happen, right? You're talking financial information, personal data, all in that mix in one institution. And usually banks have a lot of departments and sub-units under their departments with branches across countries. And even with some banks in Ghana have branches in other countries, right? So what institutions like that would typically do is to have a fixed training plan. That's a starting point. Have a training plan. When you have your training plan, you are in your training plan, you zone in on your training methods and then the frequency of that training method. I'll talk about one very, very effective, probably the most effective, which is not necessarily common in Ghana's markets, not too much anyways, would be simulation. Simulation, especially simulation phishing exercises, right? So here in KPMG, and this is, sometimes people when I mention this to clients, they think that they need some software. Yes, there are some knowledge management softwares that would help you deploy some of these simulations, but even your IT departments can can create something, right? And just a simulated phishing attack is basically after an awareness session, you've spoken a lot, you've sent out posters, your lock screens are filled with cyber tips, and you do this periodically. But how are you assessing that what you are preaching is actually entering the employees? You have to keep spreading the knowledge, keep testing them until cybersecurity is in their DNA. That's the first thing they think about in everything that they do. And I see this constantly pick up as a good culture over time. I'll give that to Ghana at least. So having a simulated phishing exercise or simulated cyber attack exercise is the most effective. Send out emails to your employees from dummy accounts. Some software would allow you to do this, to push it out and see how many of your employees are falling victim to these simulation exercises. It's been done a lot here in KPMG where we are here, and some of them look very convincing because if you pass the first few, they keep sending more convincing ones, forcing you to look critically at things like email links, looking at how the structure of the document, what attachment it is, verify, making you think critically. They keep doing it until it becomes second nature to you to think critically about the emails that you receive and the links that you receive. So simulation is very, 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 very critical. Another thing would be scenario based training using real world scenarios to teach employees. As part of our ISO implementations, we offer to do the employee awareness sessions with the clients, and then we usually develop the material for them. And what we usually do is we would draft out real life situations, real use cases, especially if you're a bank, we'll show you what has happened with other banks, leveraging our KPMG global network and resources. We'll just show you, we'll teach you how to prevent all those things, right? Making the scenarios as familiar as possible to the audience helps keep the knowledge in here, right? If you give me some very abstract scenario that's not relevant to my business, and you keep shoving that training down my throat, I will just do it as part of HR is disturbing me, so let me just complete it, right? I would never care about. But when I see scenarios and I see situations that have affected businesses just like mine, I'll be curious, especially when it's talking about how possibly maybe an HR employee is the one that's leaked, this information. If you look at targets, if you look at most of the data breaches from targets, you tie it down back to an employee's misconduct somewhere, somehow. So if I'm going to deliver a service to a company that is in commerce, I would show them the impact and the implications of that. And that company should be using these case studies or scenarios in their trainings. The last thing I would say is use videos, quizzes, and interactive content to make training. At KPMG, again, I would say we have something we call a cyber game, which is a scenario based. So based on the, usually after we've done training for them, they would have this game show up, and it has, it's been coded with a lot of scenarios, and based on the answers that you give, you are changing the resultant scenario and then seeing where you end up. So we have, usually there's a scenario where you're in a bank, you've been hacked, and you're the CEO. Make a call right now. Do you pay the ransom attack, or you don't pay the ransomware fee they're asking for, and you do other things. So each decision that you make would inform the next step, and you keep making the decisions, and then we guide you and tell you why, or the implications of what you chose, right? And then how you end up in that scenario. Some of these things work better, right? They force the employee to be interactive with the training content. If you just do your know before training or your learning management system training, whereby all they have to do is watch a video and click next, click next, click next, I guarantee you, most employees are just clicking next and they are not learning anything, because your training is already disturbing their timelines, right? So what you can also do in that situation is to put an assessment at the end of the day with a pass rate. That will force people that if you don't pass this, go back and learn it. So those are some of the things that, um, from my experience, have worked best for the organizations, right?
Thank you very much, Efe. So I'd like to ask, when you do these simulations, those who do not pass, what's being done to them? Or it's always anonymous. You don't get to find which particular individual failed their simulation test.
You find out. So it's the IT team that is spearheading this. So they know who. So then usually when you fail, they send you a training, a very nice curated training for the specific thing you failed. So then you have to take that training and pass the assessment at the end of the day. That doesn't mean that you'll never get simulated attacks in future. You would, because who knows, maybe as you're taking the assessment, you have a friend sitting by you telling you, oh, click here, answer this, answer that.
Yeah.
Human beings, yeah, so we keep doing it periodically. There's a calendar they follow, so you never know when you'll be caught.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. So someone has been left on
Welcome.
the side for a very long time. So back to you, Samuel. How are AI and machine learning transforming the cybersecurity landscape?
All right, thank you, Effie. That was very insightful. I remember a particular statement you made. You said people are following cloud because everyone is following cloud, or BI call cloud, and then they end up doing a lot of misconfigurations. I picked a lot of insights from my workers' presentation as well. Most of them I would maybe borrow some of them while I talk about AI risk and AI threats, right? Okay, so let's do AI. Now, recent times, every launch, any video you see of these big companies, everyone is talking about AI. In fact, everyone is talking about artificial intelligence so much that small companies are also talking about artificial intelligence. Medium-sized companies are also talking about artificial intelligence. I believe that the rate at which artificial intelligence is actually advancing became so quick that I think in March 2023, the big people in AI said, "Hey, AI is speeding up, so let's slow down on AI. Let's slow down. Let's halt on AI for a number of months. 6 months halt on AI in March 2023." Before I go on and talk to you, expose you to the first point, the threat side of AI, and also talk about how we can use AI to actually push cybersecurity. Let me explain the question further. So I'm supposed to talk about AI and then ML, right? Good. So there's quite a difference between AI and then ML, right? They are not necessarily the same thing, though most of the time used interchangeably. Yeah. So when we talk about AI, then we are actually talking about that broad field of creating systems which tend to simulate human intelligence. So anytime we are building some form of systems that simulate human intelligence, we could be building maybe a robot that understands natural language to the extent that it can drive itself as a car, self-driving cars, then we are talking about artificial intelligence. Then when we talk about machine learning, we are going to a baby of artificial intelligence. So today you realize that when I was talking about information security and cybersecurity, I said cybersecurity is a baby of infosec. When I talk about ML, we are talking about a subset of AI. But this case, we are focusing on the ability of machines to actually learn from the data that it has received without being explicitly programmed and being able to learn and then make itself better. So when we talk about ML, ML will be fed with large amounts of data, and then it uses own statistical techniques to look for trends or what we call patterns, to based on these trends and patterns to make meaningful predictions, and at the end improve on the general decision making of it over time, right? So now that you understand the difference between AI and ML, let me introduce you to what is happening in this era when it comes to AI, so far as cybersecurity is concerned. The first part is that, in as much as AI has become the thing that everyone is talking about, if you create a sharpened knife that is sharper than all knives, then it means that a good farmer would want to use it. So will a good thief who likes to use knives. I don't know if my example makes sense. Yes. So a good farmer would like to use a sharpened knife. So will a good thief who loves to use knives, right? Good. So that's what's actually happening. So in the
Samuel,
case of,
please not to cut you short. Some of our participants are unable to hear you, so
oh, but how is it with you? Can you hear me clearly? Am I?
I can hear
Because
you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
can hear you.
Perfect. Maybe I'll
Maybe
try to
you
speak
increase the
louder.
volume a bit. Would
Yeah,
appreciate it.
perfect. Okay, good. So
Thank
let's talk
you.
about AI threats. Participants, I hope you can hear me. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, good. Now I'm going to give my masculine voice so you can all hear me. So let's talk about AI threats. Now, there's something we call AI powered cyber attacks. It means that there are attacks which are AI driven. So it means the thief is actually using a sharpened knife, right? Good. We could cite some examples like the case of AI phishing, automated phishing that is driven by AI. So when attackers would want to do perform any form of phishing based attacks, they had their own ways of manually doing phishing or using some traditional tools to do phishing. Now, in the case of AI, attackers are able to plant automated phishing attacks. Here, people can actually analyze social media profiles with AI, a chunk of social media profiles with AI, and then based on this to craft personalized phishing emails. That is an example of an AI powered attack. We could talk about malware which are being AI generated malware. In fact, self learning malware. That's scary, right? So we are looking at malware that understands that, hey, okay, so if this is a scenario A, if scenario A will not favor you as a malware, shift to scenario B. Self-learning malware that adapts its behavior to avoid detection by security systems. So you have some traditional systems in place, and then you are you trust your systems, yeah. So I like it when if you said you cannot be 100% resilient when it comes to cybersecurity. So when you have some malware detection system in place and people are using an AI-driven malware, which is self-learning. I think in 2018, there was an AI-driven malware generated. I mean, in the face of the prevalence called Deep Locker, and this could actually remain dormant and undetected, even in the face of IDS, IPS, through facial recognition and actually trigger an attack. We're looking at malware that is AI driven. In this same era, we're also looking at the threats that comes with deep fakes and identity fraud. So we are looking at instances. Let me give you an example. I think in 2020 something came up. I believe you could have heard about it, uh, where a deep fake audio scam was reported. So an AI generated audio of a CEO commanded an employee to transfer $243,000, deep fake audio. So we are looking at these as part of the trend landscape when we talk about artificial intelligence. This will include cases of identity theft, cases of social engineering, and so on and so forth. Hitting more on the case of cyber attacks, which are AI driven, we could also talk about AI driven forms of disinformation. So, where people are using disinformation that is powered by AI, especially for those who are in Ghana, um, as we approach an election where people are actually using AI-driven forms of disinformation to influence elections. So campaigns that can actually manipulate public opinion, and then these, in a long way, affect what we call the democratic process. We could talk about people using AI-driven disinformation to actually trigger a social unrest, while people are shouting for stop galamsey. People are using AI-driven disinformation tactics to actually change the narrative, right? I'm not saying that's what's happening, but in 2020, during the US elections, people use AI-driven bots to actually set up some form of expressions of disinformation campaigns. This were able to, amplify the case of false narratives, false claims to actually confuse voters. AI driven. Yes, let's talk about what's happening more. The case of bias is very important. Bias. We can talk about racial bias, gender bias. As people are embracing AI, there is a case of racial bias where models may actually reinforce a particular social bias. So, for example, it came up that the case of recidivism in blacks was seen as being flagged more often than in whites. It means that, let me bring it down. It means that an AI assessing the case of recidivism, the likelihood that someone will perform a particular form of crime, AI said that in blacks it will happen more. It means blacks who are likely to perform a crime again than whites. These are some of the social biases that the prevalence of AI also came with. The case also came with decision making. For example, how are we sure that someone, upon taking a loan, will pay back the loan? And then we see some of these societal bias finding its way creeping into AI and its use in businesses, right? We could also talk about data privacy violations, and that come with cases of violation of GDPR rules, and then the rest. Let's talk about one important thing as well. So, on the threat landscape again, we can look at the case of invasion of privacy, where people are using AI to do mass surveillance. So let me give you a very funny scenario. So I work locally in Ghana for a particular firm which is trying to look at properties on the Ghanaian landscape and Valuate the properties. Now, some firms beyond Ghana, the shores of Ghana, I'm not going to mention any names, are using satellites, AI-driven satellite systems to actually track properties and evaluate the properties, make give values out of the properties, right? For tax purposes, right? Now, so imagine people are using satellites that is not adhering to some regulations to make these valuations. So for homes in Tishinungwa and for homes in Kaswa, those who are not from Ghana, I'm mentioning towns in Ghana, right? Where people have open bathrooms in compounds, AI is zooming inner, making valuations and seeing people bathroom. Mass surveillance that is invading people's privacy. That's a very interesting example. But we can go on from there. We can also talk about the weaponization of AI, where people are actually using AI in cyber warfare. But enough of the threats. Let me briefly take you through how businesses, how organizations can actually ensure that in the face of the prevalence of AI, AI adoption is done with greater care, right? So I'm going to talk about that briefly so that we can actually understand. AI, in as much as people are using it for evil, is greatly being doing positive things in the face of cybersecurity. For cybersecurity. So normally, I always say you can talk about two things: AI for cybersecurity and AI affecting cybersecurity, right? I have spoken a lot about AI affecting cybersecurity. Now I'm going to talk about AI for cybersecurity so you don't get lost at all. Good. So, number one, we in the face of AI, we can use AI for to maximize our efforts in threat detection and response. For example, we can use a lot of tools are being used for vulnerability management, detection, and response in these times. Now we can look at tools like maybe Darktrace. Darktrace has tools for network security, IoT security, has tools for application security, and so on and so forth. Now Darktrace, I'm mentioning Darktrace because of the its AI security side, not because I don't work for Darktrace, and I'm just mentioning Darktrace in that case. Right, good. So Darktrace actually uses some AI driven algorithms to build a baseline of normal behavior. So it says that what looks normal on a network, it sets a baseline for normal behavior on a network. And so long as that baseline is skipped, then that trace prompts an alert or triggers an alert. So in this case, if someone should mount an attack on a network, which is AI driven, then that trace is going to be able to catch it in these times. So I always say that why fight someone who is using the sharpest knife with the dullest knife, right? So we are saying that in the face of AI, cybersecurity persons, organizations should fight cybersecurity to fight threats with AI-driven cybersecurity measures, right? Perfect. So I've mentioned that threat detection and response, threat detection and prevention. Under that, we can also look at AI being used to do automated incident response. So if something has happened, something has happened. How do we know that something has happened, and how do we respond to what has happened? I'm trying to go down for the sake of the span of our audience. Very good. So IBM has a solution for called QRadar. Most of you know about this, and then they have a feature in QRadar, an advisor with Watson that actually use AI for threat analysis. So it says, what happened? What incidents occurred? How are we going to understand this particular incident? Compare it to a very large data set of similar incidents and be able to suggest a mitigation measure. So they are using AI for automated incidents response. uh, let's talk about predictive security and then risk management. I think if it spoke a lot about risk assessment, let's talk about the senior brother called risk management, right? So in doing risk management, you would want to do risk management manually based on what you know about risk management. Perfect. But when you're doing AI driven risk management, then you're actually staging your risk management on a very large chunk of data that you could never have gathered in your entire profession as a risk management expert. So, predictive security and risk management, which is AI driven, can actually also help companies. I don't want to talk about the case of endpoint security with AI, but I can mention the case of AI powered phishing detection. That is important. People actually think phishing is a baby when it comes to threats in cybersecurity, but I don't see it as such. I think that phishing is a big deal because heavy security breaches that have occurred have been based on some forms of phishing attacks. So then it makes sense, and it is a blessing to know that AI is being employed in the aspect of AI powered phishing detection, right? Where we can use AI and machine learning to detect a phishing attack by analyzing the text in an email, looking for maybe something we call a linguistic cue or a suspicious pattern to detect whether a particular attack is a phishing attack or a message is expressing a way of trying to perform some kind of phishing, right? Very good. We are looking at security operation centers, which are actually AI driven. I don't want to mention more tools, so we are looking at that as well. And then we are looking at identity and access management systems, which are also AI driven. But in the face of all this, what I want to even hammer on and make sure that you don't forget after all my English is how can organizations actually ensure that they're embracing AI the right way, AI the right way. So to do this, I'm going to mention a couple of assessments which you can actually maybe make notes of, write down. We have something we call impact assessment. Many companies are aware of impact assessment. But then we have something we call AI impact assessment. So this goes to talk about the idea that for an organization who seeks to employ some form of AI feature, AI system to support its operation, have they sufficiently considered maybe a system's relative benefits? Whether a particular AI that they want to actually, be it a chatbot, be it a recommendation system, have enough benefits? Have they been able to assess the risk? Have they even been able to assess the cost? Because it is very sad to know that companies, I mean, from assessment in past experience, employ AI for certain measures. Then, because of the case of cost, like if you mentioned, they drop it, and then that is a very simple way of experiencing a very quick attack, a very quick attack. Uh, that's your way of blindly informing an attacker that I'm ready to be attacked, right? So we are doing AI impact assessment so that the organization is able to tell that, hey, I have sufficiently considered the benefits I can get, the risk related to this particular model that I want, the cost before I would implement a particular kind of AI. So an AI impact assessment will also can actually serve as an instrument that you can use for dialogue, for maybe recording the thought process, ensuring that you are ready for accountability and are ready to offer the quality that you want by purchasing or going in for some building, developing some kind of AI impact assessment, AI in your operations as a business. Beyond AI impact assessment, I'll finish soon. And it's still not finished soon. We also have AI risk assessment. Now, AI risk assessment is, so I like AI security. I think that's my deal. So if you keep smiling, let me continue. Beyond AI impact assessment, there's also AI risk assessment, right? Here we are looking at identifying and assessing risk related to a particular AI with a view of actually mitigating them before you adopt them, right? So you want to look at transparency for a particular model. You want to look at the robustness. It would. I remember once there's this firm that tries to has a solution for thesis, research, academia, right? And they try to adopt an AI model that will help them to make their thesis, I mean, their research process quite quicker, robust, better. I mean, also, they also want to be called something.ai, right? Now, in the face of this, they adopt a particular model which they bought off the shelf, and then they'll notice that it cannot face their customer base. So an AI risk assessment that considers robustness and then also as well accuracy of the system. We can talk about that. This includes vendors AI risk assessment in case you're actually getting in a vendor. So then it takes me to my third, something we call an AI vendor assessment. So the first I spoke about an AI impact assessment, an AI risk assessment. Then we have AI vendor assessment. So you want to be able to ascertain that a particular vendor's AI or service can deliver the value you need, and then will not necessarily expose your business to some form of risk, right? Very good. So we have that as well. Then the last one I'll mention, and then I think I should be done with this, is AI readiness assessment. I believe that many companies, banks in Ghana, in our region, the sub-Saharan Africa, should make sure that they have done something on their AI readiness assessment, because not every process, I'm an AI guy, not every process in its existence now is ready to hop onto AI. Not every process. And this can be known and realized if organizations actually do AI readiness assessments. So, I mean, they would want to be able to ascertain where they are on their AI journey, right? They want to be able to prioritize efforts based on this. They want to know whether that they should build an AI or perhaps jump onto some of the shelf AI model. They want to be able to know that, well, uh, adopting AI will not bring them risk associated with maybe some standards, some international frameworks or laws. Would their AI work with some maybe NIST AI readiness assessment? Will it work if they're in Europe, or perhaps will it work with an EU AI Act AI readiness assessment? I believe that these few will then be my submission when it comes to the landscape for AI threats, and then how businesses can actually run themselves. I'm seeing questions. I think when it gets to that time, I'll talk about it. Thank you very much, Ernestina.
Thank you too very much, Samuel. So keep penning down your questions and putting them in the comment section. We'll attend to that. So thank you very much, Samuel, once again. Organizations readiness for AI. We have AI impact assessments, AI risk assessments, AI vendor assessments, and AI readiness assessments. I am going back to look into my books and do more research about that. Thank you very much. I think it's only fair that we bring Abu Bakar also out of the corner since he's been there for a long while. So moving to compliance and legal aspects, Abu Bakar, what are the most critical cybersecurity regulations businesses need to be aware of in today's digital environment?
Thank you for bringing me back. Yes, I was really enjoying the presentation from Efe. I enjoyed the presentation from Samuel, and I realized that no, I don't need to say anything again. But in the spirit of diversity, let me chip in some of the details that I'm thinking would be very important and fruitful to our audience. In Ghana, once you are growing as a company or as a business, or in Ghana, once we are pushing for what we call a digital economy, businesses that are operating in Ghana should comply to both local and international cybersecurity regulations. This will avoid legal risk and also ensure that the data that they are collecting is also being protected. It is very imperative to as a matter of urgency or importance to look at the regulatory aspect on that. I think the first that I will have to talk about is our regulation that is more than a decade, which is the Data Protection Act at 843. I think the last time we met the Data Protection Commissioner, I single-handedly I told the lady that, Madam Commissioner, it looks as if the Data Protection Act is a little bit old. She said yes, it's true. So the information is that it's still in Parliament for them to look at it and have a review of it again. Notwithstanding, hey, that is our regulation and that is what we should comply with. As a company in Ghana, you need to comply to the Data Protection Act. Be it a company collecting data, I'm talking about a company that takes personal data from members or citizens or customers, or a company that actually process this data. In all, you will need to ensure that you
It seems we are losing him due to poor network. Okay, so let's move into the future of cybersecurity whilst Abubakar works on his network. So let's go back to Samuel. How will the future of work look like and impact cybersecurity strategies? Looking at remote work and hybrid models of working. Lately, we have remote jobs, we have hybrid jobs. How will the future of work look like, and how would it impact cybersecurity strategies?
Okay, I hope I'm being heard clearly and you've not lost me as well.
No, we haven't.
Okay, no one should lose me yet. Yeah. Okay, very good. So basically, let me be very practical in answering this one, right? So I currently work remotely, right? I work remotely for a US based firm as a security auditor. But then beyond that, I'm talking about the present, and I'll talk about the future. Beyond that, I'm also working somewhat, I mean, part time, locally for other firms, a series of other firms in Ghana. I'm not in the US. I'm in Ghana. I'm in Accra. Uh-huh. Hi, those in the US. Hi. Okay, very good. So, how will the future of work be? Okay, very good. You're going to see the a very quick rise in the adoption of remote work, but then, if the trends we are seeing now maintain, perhaps a very sharp decline of the adoption of remote work. People actually don't bear with me when I say this. Now, that's what's happening. Many companies, with the onset of AI and then the prevalence of good technology, jumped into that domain of remote work, where they are saying that, hey, young people, you can be home and then you can work from home, right? But then, because of the case of advanced threats, then again, and also the case of performance and productivity, especially, I'm being biased to a section of the world in Africa. If you look at trends right now, if you compare the productivity of people who are working remotely in Africa with people who are working in house in Africa, there is it's going like this, and then it is dropping again. So some businesses who jumped into that remote boat are also running away, are coming back to the offices. They are jumping back to the offices. So the future is quite blurry. But then in that phase, we are also talking about the case of cloud. If businesses are jumping from on-prem to cloud, then it means that a lot of things with relating to cybersecurity would also be cloud-based. So cloud security will become like a mother umbrella when it comes to security, because every form of security would have something to do with cloud. So much that professionals, especially professionals listening to me, would have to necessarily, by requirement, understand some good parts and aspects of cloud security. So much that any form of audit that you would want to do would have some needs in cloud security. Any form of assessment you want to do, security testing, scanning you want to do, would have its needs in some form of cloud security. So cloud is going to be the future of tech. I mean, it's actually the future of tech, is mostly the present of tech, and will also affect largely cybersecurity. There's going to be a higher risk of phishing and social engineering attacks, because that's the easiest way. Someone says that I say someone says that humans are the weakest link. Someone, not me, right? Humans are the weakest link. Okay, someone says humans are the weakest link. Hence, many forms of attacks will be looking at humans and not necessarily directly systems. Not necessarily directly systems. So there's going to be a higher risk when it comes to the case of phishing and social engineering attacks directed at humans, right? Then again, the future, there are going to be challenges. I mean, these I'm saying, let me call them my opinions. However, let me call them, I'm being prophetic in this instance. There are going to be great challenges so far as data privacy and compliance is concerned. Now, let me sit down. When it comes to data privacy and compliance, Abubakar has taught me that I don't have to sit down and say it, I have to stand up and say it, right? So there's going to be a lot of cases, challenges when it comes to data privacy and compliance, especially we will then be questioning ourselves whether existing frameworks and regulations are exhaustive. Nations will be adjusting their making amendments to laws and regulations regarding data privacy and compliance, because some compliance the rules and regulations would tend to push down innovation in the space of technology and AI, whilst others too would actually tend to violate human normal privacy rights of individuals. So then I also see a lot of challenges rising in the face of data privacy and compliance. Very good, very good. Then my last submission, I believe that my colleagues also have a lot to say, is the case of collaboration tools. So long as companies are jumping onto remote platforms, those in the big four, I like that aspect of the big four companies where you people are riding on technology which are mostly developed by yourselves, right? So that you have a large command of these technologies, right? Um, Companies are using collaboration tools like Trello, like Slack, like Zoom, like Teams, productivity tools here and there. And then most companies have not included these in what they call their assets, So securing collaboration tools would actually also become very important in the future, and companies will look at making sure that collaboration tools that they jump on are actually secure. Let me give a very funny example. I was in a meeting talking about national security with regards to maritime, with people from Israel, different countries on board. I mean, top guys, top guns. I was like the baby, and I was listening. Then suddenly, there we experienced Zoom bombing, where some people just hijack the videos and decide to show us some things I cannot describe on this call. And it hurt my feelings that when we're talking about national security, I mean in this case international security, we could experience something like that. So the future, so long as we will also be doing a lot of things virtually, we will look at security so far as these form of tools are concerned. I believe my friends have a lot to say. Abubakar is back online, so thank you, Ernestina.
Thank you very much, Samuel. So let's bring Abubakar back so he
Thank
finishes
you.
what he started on the most critical
Thank
cybersecurity
you.
businesses need.
Thank you. Ernestina, I nearly thought that Samuel's AI got me here. Then I was only transmitting in a kilobyte per second, which means that I wasn't my rate of transmission worth of be this platform. So I'm back stronger again. I hope I don't go off. So, continuing from what I was saying is that Ghana has a Data Protection Act at 843, and in throwing more light on it, it highlights and explicitly define who a data collector should be, and who a data processor should be, and who a data subject should be, and now tends to offer the key rights, I think from Article 20 to 25, I guess, highlighting that once you are a business entity in Ghana, collecting data, being a data collector or being a data processor, once you are going to utilize the data that you've collected from the data subject, there need to be consent. And in the Data Protection Act, they gave exceptions to that. In instances where the country is facing national crisis, we don't pray for that, or national security concerns, we don't pray for that. The nation or the country is obliged to collect your data at any point in time that your data is readily available and disseminate information to you in safeguarding you as a citizen of that country. That one, the nation or the state might not need to have consent from you in disseminating such information. But then, once you are collecting data company, what I'm talking about is, let me zero it down. You are taking the how do you call it, the data subject name, you are taking his contact number, you've collected his email address, you've collected his location, GPS location, or any other landmark location or direct house address, and then taking all those vital information, sometimes even going extra further to collect data that has to do with biometric and facial and all that. Once you take this data as a business person, you need to comply with the Data Protection Act, which then means that you need to be given a certificate which will enshrine that you are collecting data and you ought to so in violation of the act, which therefore means that if we therefore find data in the wrong hands, then the law will have to take its due course on you as a business entity. And that is why I was saying that yes, of course, in Ghana we have the laws that is working. The only caveat is that I'm saying Data Protection Act came in 2012. We are now in 2024. It therefore presages that we are more than a decade, and we believe that it has been how do you call it, a little bit old, looking at the trend at which technology or the digitalization or the digital economy has evolved. But then the gathering is the amendment of this Act 843 is in Parliament and will soon be updated. The only thing is that we ensure that we have to use this medium sometimes to also educate business people, to bring in our stakeholders, bring in their input as to what their expectations should be in this upcoming amended Data Protection Act. And I hope and believe that institutions will do so. And I'm sure KPMG and other like-minded, how do you call it, top-notch institutions are actually in the know, and they're also giving their suggestions that will best shape the act in going forward. Going forward, in 2020, Ghana had the Cybersecurity Act 1038, which is also regulation locally that institutions ought to comply. What are we complying with? We are complying in such a way that we ensure that whoever comes in to protect your digital infrastructure, whoever comes in to safeguard your computers, in ensuring that your computers are safe from cyber attacks, that person is accredited by the Cybersecurity Authority and is known as someone who is best fit to handle your critical infrastructure or your data set or your digital, how do you call it, asset that you are having. So with this, it is something that we all have to take a look at again and ask questions. If we rather want to comply with Act 1038, we need to, at the end of the day, ensure that the very persons that are giving us the capacity building, just as Madam Efe was talking about, the very person that has given us the simulation that he rightly mentioned. Currently, I don't do training without simulation, then I don't call it a training. We keep on repeating trainings, and the training looks as if it's a theory. They sit down, talk about malware, you talk about phishing, they say, oh, an answer story. But once you are involving yourself in simulations, then they appreciate it when you talk about phishing. They appreciate it when you talk about malware. They appreciate it when you talk about man in the middle. So is the best solution, and I'll need to commend Madam Efe for coming up with that. KPMG doing that is top notch and is highly commendable. So what I'm saying is that once you are an expert who has experience, certification, and you have the knowledge to handle infrastructure, protect cyberspace, then you need to get accreditation. And if you are an entity, if you are an institution that want to provide cybersecurity service, or an establishment that want to conduct forensics access or forensic investigation, you need to also get licensed by the cybersecurity authority. And that should be a regulation that companies in Ghana, just as you mentioned, should look out for in regulating the landscape. Now, based on this, based on all these measures that have been put in place, today Ghana is ranked as a role model by the Global Cybersecurity Index. That is not something we pick it up from the ground. Ghana actually worked for it, and we are actually moving towards that direction. So it is something that institutions should go on. I'm quite sure KPMG and others have actually gotten their licenses, and they are fully accredited to operate. And that is something that we need to look out for. We as cybersecurity professionals, I must say that we have members that are under the tier one category. The first badge, our member was actually representative, the first badge under tier one. The second badge, our member was actually the representative for the second badge under tier one, and going forward. So actually the professionals, the cybersecurity professionals in Ghana are taking the lead in ensuring that we get the accreditation to protect digital infrastructure. And so companies should ensure that some of these things are done. Now, there is one critical aspect in the Cybersecurity Act that I would like to emphasize for companies, that it is your right to report when you are being under attack. The Cybersecurity Authority have gotten the Computer Emergency Response Team, of which this team is actually set up to receive incidents that has to do with cybersecurity and its light. So once you are a company under this regulation, you should know that the country has actually enacted a whole industry or a whole department that will receive your information when you are under attack. That notwithstanding, that doesn't mean that other sectors, for example, the banking sector head by the Bank of Ghana, is not having other centers that is also similar to that. We have a security operations sector by the Bank of Ghana. When you go to Bank of Ghana and you are under the financial industry, you have to also go by their cybersecurity policy and guidelines, follow all the necessary precautions that will ensure that you also comply at that angle. It is also another regulation that is also effective, and we recommend businesses to line. Aside that, there are international regulations. Madam Mefe talked about GDPR. Someone talked about GDPR. That's the general data protection. This is something that is general, that countries have actually taken that, zero it in, making it specific to their respective countries, and it's highly working for them. So as a company, you need to also follow that trend in ensuring that internationally your data that you are sampling is under compliance with this GDPR as well. Sometimes we may think that, oh, I'm in Ghana, why do I do that? We have Ghanaian companies that are in the cloud system that have their files stored outside the premises of the country. Even though I normally recommend that we have data center, let's also do Ghana things small at least. We have data centers in Ghana. We have a whole lot. At least NITA has a data center, a very ultra modern, of course. Private institutions have data centers in Ghana. So we recommend that institutions should also leverage on the data centers, bring back their data into the country, and let's domesticate small so that we do not put our data outside. Okay, the cable cut that came in, what happened? Those that were hosting theirs outside were actually facing the biggest challenge. Those that were hosting their solutions or their cloud solutions with them, they were enjoying. That's the benefit. We have an exchange center. We call it the Ghana Exchange Center or the Accra Exchange Center. It is all boiled down to the fact that there are regulations that you domesticate your data. But once you still say, media me pay outside now, you are allowed to go. But then if you are going there, you need to also pay attention to the fact that they have regulations there that you need to comply with. Whichever country that you are, you need to also ensure that you are complying with that. I can keep on mentioning the regulations going on and on and on, but then the regulations that is attributed to the particular area that you are hosting, for instance, if you are in the European Union, you need to also be using the general data protection regulation that we talk about. Once you violate, the fine is going to happen to you there, not in Ghana. So these are sometimes the dangers that we, the cybersecurity experts, need to also use it as a form of encouragement to you as a business owner to think about leveraging on our data centers here, and it will help. Now, even in the United States, we have the what do you call it, the California Consumer Privacy Act. This is one act that is very, very important that once you are hosting outside, you need to also ensure you comply with. But all in all, consultants that are in Ghana, experts that is born with the knowledge, companies that are actually performing cybersecurity service providing, individuals that are performing consultancy service like the Cybersecurity Association of Ghana. We have a ton of cybersecurity professionals. We are obliged to give you the directive, give you the recommendation, give you the advices as to which regulation you have to comply with. Madam Efe talked about NIST. It is an international regulation which is standard within the jurisdiction of the United States that you need to comply with. Sometimes you talk about, I think the last time we were arguing about which one should someone comply with, NIST or ISO. The issue is that ISO is actually general. That's why you heard Madam Efe mentioning ISO more without including NIST that much. It is something that is generally accepted that we should all comply with, and it is a regulation that we have to ensure that at the end of the day we employ in our various in our digital infrastructure so that the safety of our infrastructure is achieved. And I think going forward, Madam Efe talked about policies and guidelines, cybersecurity policy, risk assessment, disaster recovery. Even after the attack, what is your recovery plan? Is it that you keep on wailing and say, "Oh, yeah, the Bemanyame," or you are going to follow certain steps that will ensure that you are safeguarding yourself in future? Ghanaians are known of being people doing afterthought. Are you among the afterthought, or you are also among someone who is going to engage yourself in a prerequisite by instituting certain pragmatic measures deliberately to protect your infrastructure before it happens? And I believe that we need to be proactive. We need to deliberately consider all this regulation as a prerequisite and not an afterthought. When it happens, then you say, "Oh, then we should have gone in by it." I'm telling you that in Dansoman, an institution called that, we are under attack. What can we do? Our system is down. The main server is down. I went there and there were no security measures in place. Upon getting on with everything, I was able to recover the files up to a point where they asked me. I said, "Yes, I am not God. I can only do my humanly best. This is what I can do for you. But then now you have to now consider A, B, and C. Come and look at the speed. We will comply. What is it? Data Protection Act. Yes, of course we'll do. GDPR. Yes, we'll do." And they want to do it now, because it has happened to them. So we encourage that such compliance, or how do you call it, regulation that is coming on board should be done to reduce the rate at which attacks will be meted on companies within the jurisdiction that we are operating in the country. So that is what I'll have to say to that. Maybe I'll have to reserve my comment. I'm told we have 7 minutes to make our responses. But if there are any further questions, I'll gladly respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abubakar. So you all would attest to the fact that I brought you experts today, because that's been some deep knowledge shared for over an hour now. And I know that your books and your notepads are full of nuggets, full of knowledge, full of tips. So we would have loved to talk more, but then time is our biggest enemy here. And so we'll take just two questions and then we would wrap it up from here. So I see a question from Lewis. And since Efe talked about budgets during her submission, I'll channel this question to her. He's asking, how can small and medium-sized businesses enhance their cybersecurity on a limited budget?
Right. I think when I was speaking about my first few points about best practices, I even chipped in something from that perspective, saying that, you need to understand your digital landscape, you need to understand what your company can do instead of, just deploying these expensive solutions. Sometimes when we talk about cybersecurity, everyone sees this very flashy and all high tech. We've watched too many movies where a strong cybersecurity landscape looks like big screens. Like you enter a lab with 3 or 5 screens, and that's where the organization is doing proper, cybersecurity. But that's not the truth. I mean, movies will always be movies, and at the end of the day, even small and medium businesses can protect the organization even better than those with the 3D screens and all that. And um, ways by which the companies can do that, the most critical thing starts from educating your employees. It is by far probably the cheapest thing. So even what I even wanted to do when I gave my tidbits about best practices was to rank them in terms of costs. So at the top of it, of the least costly thing that you can do, which will be very friendly to small and medium sized businesses, will be employee education, right? And that's why every time I speak, I always make reference to the fact that I always give alternate solutions. Like, remember when I was talking about simulation when it comes to training, even though some very well off, huge global companies, bigger size companies, banks, and things which in our client portfolio, we have those sets of clients who can afford, based on their size, to deploy know before and other learning management systems from SAP and the rest, right? But you can, in your own small and medium business, to create your own simulations. There are a lot of open source tools, free tools that you can leverage to create these simulations, right? Using familiar scenarios in your trainings would also help, send the same message, but with a less or with a limited budget. At the end of the day, you are still getting value for what you have put in, right? Cybersecurity practices would be another thing. Embedding a very strong cyber culture, having a very good password policy on that front. That's another practice that small and medium sized businesses can do. Just having a password policy and enforcing it, having special characters, ensuring there's at least a number, capital letter in there, and a particular length, 8 or more in number, and enforcing a change periodically can also help, in some of your cybersecurity protection efforts. Keeping your software updated is another less costly thing that you can do for your small and medium scale businesses. Obviously, we do have small SMB clients, savings and loans, insurance, little insurance companies, startups, right? When people think big four, they always think we are going after the huge companies, right? But we work for everyone, basically. So we help startups and we help small businesses too as well. And usually when we go in there, that's why I said if you do not have the right people assisting you on your journey, you might end up making financial commitments that are not necessary. There are companies that are doing risk assessments and security monitoring with all these fancy tools and all of that. But then there are also companies that are doing their risk assessments using Excel sheets, right? And then they follow it religiously, and they do better than all these other. So we have, you look at the big company with their SIM tools or their database monitoring tools, Imperva and the likes, and they have alerts flying in from everywhere. Sometimes their their staff will suffer from something we call alert fatigue. When there's an excess of alerts, they feel like there's so many things blowing in their face. Somebody goes to sleep, a serious red flag comes to cross by, they don't see it, and boom, there's a breach. Why do you think that most of the time the people that are making the news are the big companies, right? Because That's why I say understand your landscape and implement what is going to work for your landscape. I will work out mention a lot of people are doing cloud and sending their data across when you can safely host your data in Ghana, which I am sure would cost you cheaper than forcing and going to pay for an Amazon bucket or all those other things. You're not necessarily exploring all your options, and at the end of the day, you realize that all these businesses are not getting the proper advisory services, right? Because we have big companies that have implemented all these standards, and we have very small, and when I say very small, I mean very small startup companies that we have helped to implement these standards. And it's not a one size fits all. There are diverse security approaches. And another thing is just to make sure that your antivirus and anti-malware is up and running all the time. You have a firewall in place, and you are doing backups, and you are doing proper access controls. People often overlook access controls, and access control is one of the controls that will cut across when you're even looking, when I'm doing data privacy assessment, privacy impact assessments, privacy compliance assessments, I'm doing ISO, I'm doing anything that I'm doing in all these frameworks, regulations, and standards. Access control is at the bottom of it. You can use a privileged access management tool, PAMS, to sort out your privileged access, but on a smaller budget, you can just be doing um, 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 very closely marked access reviews, whereby your CISO or your IT head is not just sleeping, but he's reviewing his logs periodically. He's reviewing the access controls, who did what at what point in time. So at the end of the day, even all the things that I'm saying, the cheapest and most effective thing you can do, because all of these things rely on how skilled the person you have employed is, the education of the staff at the end of the day. So if you're a small and medium scale business, invest in your people, invest in your technology the best way that you can, and ensure that there are policies guarding that, and ensure that your people are not slacking, right? That's what I would say for small and medium skilled businesses. Cybersecurity is for everybody. Yeah.
Yes, can I quickly add something in a minute?
Sure. A minute.
I was enjoying that, and I said no, maybe I don't have to add anything. But then in Ghana in 2020, I led a team that did the research on small and medium enterprise. That came up 80% of small and medium enterprises are always under cyber attack. That therefore
Mm-hmm.
means that they are always the lowest hanging fruit.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't have the necessary infrastructure. They don't keep themselves safe. So attackers always get them first. And I think this research I did was even added to the ITU rating that placed Ghana under a role model stage. And I must praise myself for that. At least I did the research that the CSA used, that at least Ghana is also being ranked there. Now going forward, the areas that I'm thinking in a single way, Marafi has talked about everything, is to look at the free resources, the free tools.
The free
You
tools,
can't
yeah.
buy antivirus. You can't have antivirus. Go use your Windows Defender. You can't buy password manager. Use the Bitwarden. You don't have firewall. Use the Komodo free firewall. I'm talking about those that is affordable. And then within the country, and I even talked about the fact that they also have standard for SMEs. You speak to them. What are the various support you have for someone like me that doesn't have anything? Then they say, okay, let's come down to your level because when we dig with the big guys, we have how much we charge. But since you are one of the small guys, this is how much we give to you. We look at institutions like Smart Infraco, KPMG, then we say, oh, those guys, I don't even have to go there because they are going to charge me in dollars and all that. Speak to institutions, cybersecurity professionals, speak to people like Samuel, someone like myself. We have standards for small and medium enterprises that can benefit. And I think that's what I have to say in addition to what Madam Efi talked about. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Abubakar. Thank you, Ifi. Samuel, do you have anything to add on?
Oh, certainly. I will always have something to add. But anyway, thank you very much, Efi and then Abubakar. Um,
Sure.
so one thing I want to add, like, if you mentioned something about education, okay, so education, there are very, very easy ways to do education. For example, I think that Google has something called Google's phishing quiz. You can just go online, just search for Google phishing quiz, and then let your employees within a particular security awareness program do the Google's phishing quiz. I mean that's actually free. I mean when it comes to maybe ensuring that you are actually using multi-factor authentication, you could think about using the Google Authenticator. I mean, that's also free. I mean, so like Abubakar also said, there are lots of tools which are free, which are still good tools. And I believe that if small scale and medium enterprises go for these tools, it will help them largely. But then the major thing I wanted to add was that there should be some, I will not call it a policy, a document for that small business that is going to highlight what they want to do in terms of security. So the document will say that these are the things we find important in this company. Could be some systems, computers, routers, servers. We find them important. There could be some data, right? Perhaps some data located somewhere. We find it important. There could be some processes. So that we find important. Let's list them. How do we want to protect them? We have rule one. So don't be too technical. A small business, find some rule one, rule two, rule three, and go through these rules and use the free tools. Then, as a small business, as an NGO, as some small business in Africa, somewhere around Techiman, you will still be doing cybersecurity. And like if you said, we will not need those large screens. I think we had a good discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you too very much. On that note, it's a wrap. I'd like to thank our panelists for their time and the knowledge shared with us. I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for spending time with us, your resources and everything. We don't take it for granted. So until next time on another webinar session, it's bye for now and thank you for having us once again.
All right. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Have a good day, you all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah. Thank you.